Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. It is hour number 2 of a Football Friday right here on the early line. He is Joe Raineri. I am Ben Stevens. Of course, our charge each and every Football Friday in the NFL season is to preview the entirety of the Sunday slate any given week. It is week number 11 of this NFL campaign. And Joe, there are so many good games that dot the slate on Sunday. Mike Blewett will join us later in this second hour to preview everything. We'll preview every single game on Sunday as well. We'll talk some college football in hour 3, some college basketball, NBA Cup, and Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, you heard that right, as well, to kick off our third and final hour before our best bets for the weekend. What a Football Friday that we still have rolling here for the next 2 hours on TEL.
I mean, a loaded, absolutely loaded weekend in store, Ben. Tonight, great college football, and you mentioned it, man, the ability to see Mike Tyson one last time, put the gloves on in a ring. I'm all for it, man. I can't wait to see it.
It will be fun. That is for sure. Got a little bit feisty yesterday at their final weigh-in. All right, so now let's go to this Football Friday. We continue to preview every game on the NFL Sunday slate. And, Joe, in our opening hour after our recap of Thursday night in Philadelphia, that was a monumental matchup. We previewed the game of the year, potential Game of the Year 3 between the Chiefs and the Bills on Sunday in Western New York. A huge AFC North showdown in the Steel City between Pittsburgh and Baltimore that will decide the top spot in the AFC North. You might be thinking, wait, Baltimore and Pittsburgh are at 1 p.m. and the game in Buffalo is at 4:25. Why are these games not Sunday night? Well, I would hear that argument, but Sunday night, not bad. SoFi Sunday night, in fact, in Los Angeles, between the Chargers and the Bengals. It is a game that, despite being a slight road underdog, Cincinnati can ill afford to lose. Meanwhile, Jim Harbaugh gets to a new organization, gets to a new program, and he has displayed in the entirety of his head coaching career, he wins. Not in a year or two, but right away. The Chargers are 6-3 and a slight home favorite on Sunday night. Total 47.5. Joe, how do you see Sunday in SoFi between the Bolts and the Bengals playing out?
Well, here's a trivia question for you. Ready, Ben? What do Gardner Minshew, Bryce Young, Bo Nix, Spencer Rattler, Jameis Winston, and Will Levis all have in common this year? Yeah.
They lost to the Chargers.
Bingo, there you go. Those are the quarterbacks the Chargers have managed to figure out how to beat. Joe Burrow, not in that category, even remotely close, nor are they even remotely close offensively, Cincinnati, to any of those teams that they've already beat. And listen, the market is telling you that, Ben. This is 1.5. It would appear to me the market has no idea. They're not comfortable with laying the customary 2.5, maybe 3 here for the Chargers. We already know they don't have a great home field advantage over the years, but let's be realistic here. Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and anybody else they want to throw at them, the Chargers defense, this is going to be a lot for them to deal with. They had a lot to deal with against Tennessee last week. I think this is do or die for Cincinnati again. I think the market listing this at -1.5 tells you they're not all in on the Chargers. I think Cincinnati has a really good opportunity to put points up against this defense. And I like the Chargers. I don't like them in this spot against Cincinnati at all.
I completely agree, Joe. I would say that's exactly how I feel on this game. We'll see it later in our Sunday Pick 6 for NFL Week number 11. Yep. My outright underdog, my money line underdog is Cincinnati. It is a game the Bengals cannot lose because if they do, they will be 4-7. And at a certain point, Joe, you have to really wonder what the rest of the season has. I would say the margin of error for Cincy is incredibly limited. Maybe one more loss, potentially 2, but that would be it. And 9-8 would not make you feel easy coming down the home stretch in the final 2 and 3 weeks of the NFL season. The Bengals still have a lot of divisional games on the horizon. Both games against the Steelers And Pittsburgh's looking pretty darn good. And another one against the Browns, if I am not mistaken. They've already played the Ravens, and as we talked about on a Football Friday exactly a week ago, they will look back on their season if they miss out on the playoffs and say we squandered opportunities to knock off the flock. They cannot let this opportunity pass them by. Now, LA has won 3 consecutive games, 4 of their last 5. The Chargers have covered in all 6 victories this season. Joe, this total for LA, kind of like we highlighted for Pittsburgh and Baltimore, is by far the highest the Bolts have played this season. The previous highest total, that Monday night doubleheader game in the desert against Arizona, 44.5. Those two teams didn't even come close to even threatening that total. 17-15, the final score. The Chargers did lose on the road. In fact, the Chargers have gone under in 7 of 9 games. If LA is going to win, this game stays under. But if Joe Burrow gets the better of Justin Herbert, as we might expect as we compare these quarterbacks, that favors the Bengals, and the Bengals in a big way.
Yeah, it absolutely does, Ben, and I do think there is a correlation. But we've also seen Charger home games go under, right? I mean, we've seen 44, 34, 27, and 32 in the last 4 home games for the Chargers. Total points. They average at home, their games average around 33.8 points. That's 4 less than any team. Chargers don't play at a fast pace, but the Chargers also have done a great job of playing from in front. The Chargers have not found themselves, Ben, having to play from behind. Can't take your time and run the ball if you're trailing, and I think that's what we're going to see. I think the Bengals can score quickly, and then I think the Chargers are going to have to play catch-up. That's where the over comes into play.
You know the recipe for L.A. Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman told us all about it way back in the summer. Take the onus off Justin Herbert, unlike his first 4 years in the league, and establish the freaking run. They do a great job of doing that. In fact, last week's win was the first of their 6 that J.K. Dobbins did not score a touchdown. The Bolts are the best scoring defense in the NFL. Jesse Minter has been incredible in his first year in the National Football League as a defensive coordinator. The Bengals are not a good scoring defense. They're giving up more than 26 points per game. And Cincy has its defensive issues, Joe. They're not terrible against the run. So if they can slow that down early and the Bengals can score often and early, that puts the Chargers in a position they do not want to be. Again, huge game for Cincinnati. The back half of the AFC, not great. Both of these teams contending for wild card spots. The Chargers in a great position to start in its first 9 games. The Bengals, not so much, but a win on Sunday would be huge. And I would just say this. If the Bengals do make a charge to the postseason, that 30-1 price on Joe Burrow to win MVP going to look a lot different. Because, Joe, that's the only thing not making that price 3-1 right now. The numbers, the efficiency, the passing touchdowns, the yardage, all of it is there for Joey B. It's just the fact his Bengals team got off to a winless 0-3 start, and they're still 2 games below 500.
Yeah, and it's a good point here, Ben, because I do think, obviously, they go as Joe Burrow goes. So if they are able to string together some wins here, they're going to rack up a whole lot of yards. He's going to rack up a whole lot of style points. And also keep in mind, they are 5-0 on the road against a number this year, Cincinnati. So say what you want.
Yes, they are.
Burrow is not going to be intimidated by any of this. And maybe, just maybe, Higgins sees the field again in this game.
He was back at practice yesterday. People examining the way he ran up the hill and across the street to get to the Bengals practice field. And Joe Burrow, by the way, is an underdog, Joe, as you well know. 17-3 against the spread in his NFL career. Plenty more from the Sunday slate next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
A big game on Sunday in Santa Clara between the 49ers and the Seahawks, an NFC West showdown, important for San Francisco, trying to stay above 500 and contend once again for the NFC West. They are a half game behind the Arizona Cardinals at this moment, who they lost to earlier this year. San Francisco has not been great in the division, trying to figure it out on Sunday at home. But Christian McCaffrey is back for a second consecutive week following the bye in San Francisco, Joe, who has been booked as a favorite in every single game since the start of last year, nearly a touchdown favorite against the Seahawks, who are also coming out of the bye. How do you see this game near the Bay playing out on Sunday?
So I think you just nailed it there, Ben, right? 49ers versus Seahawks. Let's see what we've got. 6 straight wins. I see by 20 points, 8 points, 18 points, 18 points, 12 points, and 12 points. That means the median winning margin is right around 12, 12 and a half. This line is 6.5. Yeah, okay. I'm good on the 49ers. I'm good. Yeah, if it ain't broke, Ben, we ain't fixing it here, and I ain't fixing this either. I think the Seahawks, I don't know what not a whole lot to be excited about here. Geno Smith kind of regressed after that 3-0 start. Injuries, obviously, the running game not there. Mike McDonald, maybe not the first-year head coach, defensive genius that everyone made him out to see. So, yeah, I think the 49ers very comfortable against the Seattle team, and they'll also be very comfortable running away from them. So under a touchdown, I'm good with the 49ers.
Yeah, I thought the 49ers would win comfortably in Tampa last week. It was not comfortable, and yet it was a victory. Seattle started 3-0, but just 1-1-1 against the spread, and based on the competition, many people felt maybe it was perhaps a fraudulent start. Well, the Seahawks have now dropped 5 of their last 6. They have not covered in any of those 5 losses. 4 of those 5 booked as an underdog. They are just 1-4 ATS as a dog this year. The only cover was an outright victory in Atlanta. I also don't really believe in the Falcons. Seattle over in 5 of its first 6 games, now under in 3 consecutive entering the bye. I would just mention this. I thought we'd see way more points last week between the Niners and the Buccaneers. We did not stay well under a total that was slightly north of 50. It was the first time in any of the 5 wins for the 49ers this season that San Francisco failed to cover, to go over the pregame total, or to score 30-plus points. I think that offense is in for one on Sunday. Here's a really interesting line, Joe.
Oh, okay. I knew it was going to be it was so interesting, in fact, that Ben has to double check it, and we'll get back to him in a second. I will also say this, keeping in mind with that 49er and Seattle game, is that we did see the first go-around in that game. Don't forget, no Christian McCaffrey. They had their number 3 and number 4 running backs who gashed them for 228 rushing yards in the game. So what are you going to do with Christian McCaffrey back in the fold now? So, yeah, all over the 49ers here, Ben.
Who only had 13 carries for 39 yards in his season debut against the Buccaneers, but 68 receiving, still 107 scrimmage yards. Again, we will talk about that in just a little bit in our third and final hour. As I was saying, intriguing matchup at Mile High on Sunday. The Broncos are now an even 500. They have dropped 2 straight. They have been greater than a touchdown underdog in each of those 2. They got blitzed by Baltimore in Baltimore. Of course, we're going to upset the Chiefs until a blocked field goal as time expired last week in KC. The Falcons are 6-4. We've said this a few times. Atlanta lost last week to the interim head coach in New Orleans as the Saints were riding a 7-game skid. Not a great look for the Falcons, but they've built up a big enough lead in the NFC South, the only team above 500, and they've won 4 of their first 5 divisional games. That really, Joe, the Falcons are going to take advantage of a bad division and be a playoff team. But just how good is Atlanta? Let that line kind of show you. Denver is a home favorite. It was 2.5. Now it's just a point and a hook. Total 43.5 down from where it was just yesterday at 44.5. How do you break down the matchup at Mile High?
Yeah, I think it's a Bo Nix, got to give him credit. Sean Payton, I think he's managing games very well. I like what we saw from him last week. There are going to be opportunities against this Falcons defense to be able to put points up on the board. I think the real difference is going to be what is the Atlanta defense versus the Denver defense. Who do we trust more here? And again, I have issues here with Kirk Cousins outdoors in Mile High against a defense that is going to go and get him. It's a havoc, really wrecking havoc style of defense here. Very physical. Don't trust Atlanta outdoors. I do think the Broncos will bounce back after a game they should have won at Arrowhead. I think they'll get one here against Atlanta. You know, that whole AFC, Atlanta, 3-9 against the number versus the AFC since 2022. They don't tend to play well in these games.
The Broncos also 7-3 against the spread, but when they have been booked as a favorite, it's been for good reason. They're perfect. ATS 3-0. I agree with you, Joe. I think the line is telling us something. I'll back the Broncos. So, here we go. Sunday at Soldier Field in the Windy City. It's been a tumultuous last month for Caleb Williams, Matt Eberflus, and the Chicago Bears. And I do not think the firing of Shane Waldron and the change of offensive play caller really fixes it. I'm not even sure it's a Band-Aid over a gashing wound. But the market has moved a little bit. The Packers out of a bye and a bad loss the week prior, still 6-3. Now just a 5.5-point road favorite in Chicago. It was closer to a touchdown earlier in the week. Joe, we know the interim bump. Will there be an interim OC bump for the Bears?
No, there won't be. There's issues in this locker room, Ben, and there have been now for some times. There is a divide within that locker room. Multiple veterans would rather not have seen Caleb Williams instead of Caleb Williams being benched instead of Waldron getting fired. Not good. Not good.
Not good. A lot of reports that we'll talk about next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all
people, what in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Quarterly, I missed you hinting your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you was here on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid, we preview the entirety of the Sunday slate on this Football Friday. He is Joe, I am Ben. All right, as we were saying right before the break, there's an interesting situation brewing in Chicago. Even after the dismissal of offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, we don't really think it changes much for this franchise that does not seem to have a lot of belief, perhaps in their head coach, certainly not in the Eberflus, maybe not in their rookie quarterback or the number one overall pick. There's been some scuttlebutt, if you will, some speculation, some rumors that the locker room is unhappy with Caleb Williams, that they would rather see the backup, Tyson Bagent, who had a little bit of success last year. But now there are reports that it's Tyson's father, the arm wrestling champion Travis Bagent, that is spreading these false rumors. Regardless, Joe, if there's smoke, there is fire. It is not a good situation, and it's a terrible scenario for a rookie quarterback in the number one overall selection, Caleb Williams. Yep. Here are the passing yards numbers, 190.5. Those are Justin Fields prices, man. That's not good because that was not a success story in the Windy City. Regardless of the change now with Shane Waldron, I do believe Matt Eberflus is going to be fired at the end of this year, so that will be a third offensive play caller for Caleb Williams in less than 2 years in the NFL, more than likely with a second full new coaching staff as well. This is where things turn sour rapidly, and that is the fear for Chicago.
It has to be. And it's such a shame here, Ben, because this defense is a legit championship quality defense here. And I think the only reason at this point that Eberflus wasn't fired is because he is really the architect of what this defense has been able to do. So it's really the only good part. But they set this kid up, Caleb Williams, to fail from the start by bringing in Shane Waldron, who basically got run out of town in Detroit. So I do think that, an amazing, Ben, you win this game, and guess what? All of this is water under the bridge. That's how the NFL works. But I am with you. I think none of this is a news story in the NFL. Teams that are underperforming, egos in the locker room, coaching staff, no leadership. This is a story we have seen a million times over the years with organizations.
And maybe if the McCaskey family had a little bit of, the chutzpah to fire Eberflus, then I would say the interim bump is at play. Give me the Bears covering against their northern nemesis. But that is Green Bay. The Packers have beaten the Bears 10 consecutive games, 15 of the last 16. It has not gotten any better even after Aaron Rodgers left the state of Wisconsin. And that is also at play. And it's not like the Packers are like, la-di-da, we won 4 straight. We don't want to hiccup. They looked awful against the Lions at home in Lambeau heading into their bye. And Jordan Love has thrown an interception in every game he has played this year. So out of the bye, Green Bay is trying to get the Pack back on track. It's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion, for Chicago on Sunday, as much as that pains me to say. Joe, we can make this game rather quick. The Lions are a 13.5-point favorite at home on Sunday against Max Jones and Jacksonville. The Jags, a 2-8 football team. It's a very large number by NFL standards. In fact, the largest spread this season. But the Lions are an elite, not just football team, but cover team. Is it possible, though, for the Lions to cover as a 2-touch favorite at home?
Well, it's a big number, Ben, for any NFL game, right? It's over the top. But we've already seen the Lions with 30 or more point wins against, the Cowboys and the Titans in the last couple of weeks. I mean, heck, they got a quarterback throwing 5 interceptions, and they're still winning games. No Trevor Lawrence for Jacksonville, although I thought the defense, finally healthy, showed up last week against Minnesota and put on a show, but that was at home.
Yeah.
Now you're going to get Jared Goff at home. If he doesn't make the same mistakes, the team total for Detroit to me is the just bet it and keep betting it. That's it. Forget about Jacksonville.
30.5 is that number, Joe. It's the way that I would look as well. Oddly enough, the Jags are 5-1 against the spread as a dog this year, including 3 consecutive covers in each of their last 2 as at least a touchdown dog. Last week at home against the Vikings, and then with the help of Nick Sirianni and the officiating crew in Philadelphia the week prior. We'll show you this number right here, Minnesota and Tennessee. We'll talk to Mike Blewett about this game and the rest of the Sunday slate. Up next on this Football Friday, when Big Blue joins the show.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, guys?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Fortunately, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Oh, man, the Football Friday is off to a wild start here in this second half. Is that the way that we want to welcome on Mike Blewett? Let's have some respect when Big Blue joins us here on a Football Friday. As always, Blue, we appreciate the time. Thank you for being here on this Football Friday. A huge Week 11 to preview with you, and also a quick look back and recap on Thursday night in Philadelphia.
So the off-air banter sometimes matches or surpasses the on-air banter. We had a good session right there. Let's try to move the on-air banter in front of the gem that Joe Frizo just dropped for us. So I would say last night was a really I was texting our own Kevin Walsh last night, who's a big Eagles fan, saying this is such an odd game because Philly was in control of it, but they couldn't put it away. Missed kicks obviously are part of that, but they were stalling, right? They were stalling on these key third downs and having to put Elliott out there for more field goal attempts. Now, they put it all away, kind of felt like a blowout for a minute there at the end, but then Washington is onside kicking it and everything else. It was just an odd game. What I would land the plane with is that I think we are seeing, and I was listening to Greg Cosell earlier this week talking about how Jaden Daniels has had an excellent rookie season, but we are seeing some rookie issues right now. He's not lighting up the league like he was for the first month of the season. And the Steelers and now the Eagles are finding ways to contain him and get after him within the pocket. Conversely, Saquon's an unbelievable addition to the Eagles, but is Jalen Hurts playing at championship caliber football right now? I don't think so. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith were barely involved in the game plan last night. And I think that's something that Eagles fans are going to be worried about. They can boo the missed kicks and Nick Sirianni all they want. The quarterback and the wide receivers have to get to a point where they are explosive as they have been in the past if they're going to surpass teams like the Niners and the Lions and the Packers in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. So the running back last night, Saquon Barkley, Blue, to your point, was the key. So as we take a look at the outlook after that crucial NFC East battle last night, Philadelphia now a game-and-a-half lead for the top spot, minus 240 to win the divisional crown, entering Thursday night, now on this Friday morning, minus 550. Two-part question for you, Blue, before we preview the rest of a huge Sunday slate where a lot of these significant games, like we saw last night on a Thursday, do lie ahead on the horizon. The Eagles are a hefty favorite in the NFC East. Do you think the division has already been wrapped up based on last night? If so, what is your postseason outlook for Philadelphia? Are you truly concerned about the Eagles not maybe living up to the billing of a true conference contender?
I do think I have concern, to answer the second one first. I do think I have concern because we're seeing too much inconsistency. I think if it all comes together for Philly, they're certainly talented enough to do it, right? They have lots of talent on both lines. They have their biggest weakness on their team last year was their defensive backfield. It added two young players who, to the Eagles' credit, don't have to spend a lot of time on the field because they are controlling the ball well with Saquon and a strong running game. So it puts Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell in better position so that they're not out there for 75 snaps a game. So but I do have concerns, like I said, versus some of the other teams there. In terms of the division, I think Philly is clearly the best team. I have tickets for them to win the East from the beginning of the season. I think Washington has issues clearly defensively. The loss of Jonathan Allen, the defensive backfield is the weakest part of their team. Cliff Kingsbury, unfortunately, has seen a lot of late season swoons in his career as a coordinator and as a head coach. I'd fear that that's going to be the case here again, but the Commanders' schedule upcoming, they'll have some wins out there. They still have the Saints, they have the Titans, they have the Cowboys. So we might be in a situation where a month from now, after their bye week and another game, they're 11-4. 10-4. It's entirely possible. I just think Philly's the better team right now.
All right, Blue. So the game that everyone is going to be interested in over the weekend is in Orchard Park with the Bills taking on the Chiefs, and a lot of people feel that the Chiefs are living on borrowed time here. All but 2 of their wins have been by 1 score, so they've gotten a ton of breaks, including last week here. But Mahomes as a dog in any spot has always been a money bet here. Is it a money bet this week as they're getting 2.5?
Yeah, a lot to this game, obviously, with the numbers. Mahomes 12-1-1 against the number and 11-3 straight up as an underdog in his career, including the postseason. They're 9-0, only 5-4 against the number, have not covered any of their last 3 games. They played each other 7 times in the last 4 years. Kansas City's 4-3 against the spread and straight up, and it's 4-3 to the over. So these games are not quite that easy to bet, right? They're coming on both sides of the number. The Bills are 5-5 against the number, but have covered 4 of their last 5. That 3-0 back to 3-2. What's wrong with the Bills? They've been on fire since, right? And scoring a lot of points in doing so.
Yeah.
I think that the Bills' slow starts, Joe, and we've seen this pretty consistently when we've been on air on In-Game Live, has been something we've talked about every week. Their first quarters have been bad. They are still, I believe, at a negative point differential in the first quarter of games. So I could see this being a low-scoring first half, the teams checking each other in that first quarter, and we have a low-scoring game and the defense checking each other. It's going to be a really fascinating second half. I think it's when it's all going to be decided. I have to lean with Mahomes getting the points, but this would not surprise me based on the emotional way in which they've been winning these close games, that the Chiefs finally have a letdown. If they win this game, you have to start thinking that undefeated season is a reality, because this would be a really unbelievable game to pull off on the road against this Bills team that's on fire right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Chiefs, of course, undefeated, perfect 9-0, an underdog just once this year. It was the Super Bowl 58 rematch, also on the road in Santa Clara. They beat the Niners by double digits. The Chiefs now an underdog here since the start of last year, a perfect 5-0 outright as an underdog. Buffalo in this 5-game win streak has covered, though, in 4 of 5. Blue, let's talk the quarterbacks, because both quarterbacks, of course, are trying to lead their team to the postseason promised land. Patrick Mahomes has all of the pedigree. Josh Allen has very little of it, and in fact has faltered in the most significant of stages. This is not so much a playoff question, but rather an MVP question. Both have been booked at times this year as the MVP favorite, but despite some of the numbers not being overly impressive, what can we expect out of the quarterbacks in Orchard Park on Sunday?
You know, that 42-36 classic in the playoffs, the 13 seconds left, and Mahomes gets the win in overtime. Josh Allen played the game of his life. I know you said he faltered, but it wasn't really his fault. A little bit of coaching issues there and defensive issues. I think Allen is the more likely one to put up the bigger numbers, not just this weekend, but for the rest of the season. You've heard me say it before. I think Mahomes' presence still distracts people to some extent on how good this defense is. I really am wavering a lot on this game. I have to take Mahomes plus the points, but I think the Kansas City defense might meet their match this weekend in Josh Allen. I expect big numbers out of him.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting game, of course, and incredibly significant. The Bills are downplaying its importance, which is probably the right way of doing things, as Buffalo has been bounced from the postseason 3 of the last 4 years by Kansas City. Their focus, that AFC title price at 4-1, and cashing that ticket, finally keeping the Chiefs from doing so. Plenty more from the Sunday slate with Mike Fluid on this Football Friday next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
people, what in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take. I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you. Pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line, a Football Friday continues with Mike Blewett in this second hour. Blue, Thursday night in the divisional duel for the top spot in the NFC East really sets the stage for the rest of Week 11. The impactful games we are breaking down, and of course that includes Sunday for your favorite team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers enter Sunday at home, hosting the Baltimore Ravens, with that slight half-game advantage atop the AFC North. But unlike last night elsewhere in the Commonwealth in Philadelphia, the home team is not favored, and the home team is not the favorite to win the division. It is still Baltimore, despite a slightly worse record at this moment. 3. That is the very flat and key number in favor of Baltimore. A total of 48.5 for a Steelers-Ravens game. What's going on, Blue? How do you see Sunday in the Steel City playing out?
It's a pretty amazing dynamic, right? Because I feel like a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Baltimore's just the better team," and Steelers are having a great season. But we'll see what happens when they meet. And then the Steelers are a home dog. Tomlin's a home dog, and Joe and I have talked about this so many times. The Steelers are money in these circumstances, even if they are going up against better teams. The Steelers have won 7 of the last 8 straight up, and against the number, all of them decided by one score amongst these two teams. All of them decided by one score. In the last 8 games, 7 in a row in this game to the under, the Steelers-Ravens games. And the underdog has covered 9 of the last 10. Now, Lamar is only 1-3 against the Steelers in his career. There's been some late season injury and late season replacements. The Steelers beat the Ravens twice last year, but Snoop Huntley started the final game as Lamar was resting for the playoffs. The encouraging thing for the Steelers is that last week they won a game 28-27, right? The numbers, the scoring started to explode. Joe was right on that game to be an over against the Commanders, and the Steelers hung with them. Now, I'm not saying they want to go blow for blow against Lamar Jackson, but there is a world in which they can win a game in the 20s. So that'll be pretty fascinating if they can pull that off. I have to take the Steelers with the points at home, and that's just kind of where I'm going to lie. The Steelers and Tomlin, as underdogs, have been really good in this spot, even if you think the Ravens are the better side.
When you look last 12 games as a home underdog since 2021, they've won 8 outright. If it ain't broke, don't fix it here. The question is, are we looking at the winner being I don't know, not only the AFC North champion, but should we be considering Pittsburgh in the long run here? Look at that, 15-1 right now for the AFC title. And at some point, we got to come to the realization this is a real dangerous team come January, no?
Yeah, it's kind of funny to me because they really haven't had a prove it game yet. Last week was one of the first ones where they could prove it. They just beat up on a lot of bad teams, and now the schedule gets very difficult, right? We were just talking off air how they have the Chiefs on Christmas. They have all 6 divisional games, and they have Philly. Now, the Browns aren't as good as they were. What are the Bengals going to look like? They're obviously very good offensively, but the Steelers have a lot of tough games coming up. So I don't think anybody will be on board with the Steelers unless they really rip off some huge wins. The Steelers could go 4-4 the rest of the way, and they are an 11-win football team, right? But people will be doubting, well, they've closed pretty weak on the season. I just don't think you're going to really want to play this defense in December and January and hopefully into February as a Steelers fan and think you're going to get away with a lot. Jaden Daniels had a real comeuppance last week, and they handed the Commanders a touchdown because of maybe an ill-advised fake punt attempt. So I'm again, another fascinating game. You said Bills Chiefs is the marquee game, and this is a 1A, 1B situation for me. And I do not think, Joe, to answer your question, I don't think this one decides the division. Too many games to go. If the Steelers won, I think there's way too many tough games in front of them, and Baltimore would have to say the same. Baltimore is the worst pass defense in the NFL. Teams do not win the Super Bowl with that kind of situation.
They are the best rushing defense in the NFL, but they allow a lot of points, more than 25 per game. Steelers' second best scoring defense in the National Football League. Best scoring defense, that's the LA Chargers, a team that also gives up a lot of points. That's the Cincinnati Bengals at more than 26 per game. They face off on Sunday night in SoFi in the Bolts, just a slight 1.5 favorite at home. Blue, when you look at this game, the Bengals can ill afford a loss, being 2 games below 500 at 4-6. So tell us, will the Bengals lose on Sunday night?
I think this is obviously a really interesting game for some of the same reasons we were talking about people doubting the Steelers. Guys, I feel like that's happening with the Chargers too. It's not sexy all the time with them. They have a very specific way, Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh trying to run the ball, control clock. But Justin Herbert is the QB. And as they start to develop guys like Quentin Johnston and other options like Lad McConkey, this offense could get more dangerous as we get further into the season. The defense is playing, frankly, better than I expected. And I just feel like they're a team that's being doubted. But all that being said, Cincinnati's offense is a lot to deal with. They are a better team than their record indicates. They do have defensive issues, but in this instance, I'll take the points. I do like Cincinnati to win this football game.
And that is a huge, huge game, Blue.
Yep.
Huge game on Sunday. Quickly here, we're going to fly around a lot of the rest of the Sunday slate on the other side of the break. But let me get you one with a couple of teams that might have a sliver of hope of being an outside wild card contender. The Colts go back to Anthony Richardson as they head to MetLife on Sunday to take on Aaron Rodgers in the 3-7 Jets. The Jets, once again, 3.5-point favorite, expected to win a game they must have. What do you think, Blue?
I think if the Jets lose this game, you can just call it. Just call it all now. Just walk home. Just call it. Just get on your flight.
Let me just call it now, Blue. Call it now. Don't even wait for the outcome. Just call it. It's over.
I do not want anything to do with this game, Ben.
Colts outright. Anthony Richardson returns. More from Sunday next.
right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line, we fly around the rest of the Sunday slate of our 12 games on Week 11 Sunday. We have already previewed 8, the Final 4 with Mike Blewett to wrap up this second hour on a Football Friday. Blue, in Tennessee, it's the Titans and the Vikings. Now, the Titans are not a great football team, only 2 wins this year, but a 5.5-point underdog against the Minnesota Vikings, who are off to a 5-0 start, dropped 2 in a row. Now have won 2 straight, but Sam Darnold may be some slight regression after 3 INTs in a narrow escape for a victory last week in Jacksonville. How do you break down this matchup on Sunday in Nashville?
There have been some bad football games this year, really bad NFL football games. And Joe and I had the pleasure of watching that Vikings-Jaguars game together. And I got to be honest, I think that's the victor right now. That was one horrendous football game, and the Vikings played a big role in it. You can't just blame Mac Jones and the Jaguars offense. The Vikings are turning the ball over too, kicking field goals, not getting any scoring opportunities when Justin Jefferson is on the team. The one thing that the Vikings have been really good at is forcing the ball to Justin Jefferson early and generally getting points in the first half. It has slowed the last few weeks, but I can tell you their approach right out of the gate is aggressive. It's not hand the ball to Aaron Jones a few times, get the running game going. It's Sam Darnold firing to Justin Jefferson early, trying to get the pass game going. The Titans defense has been a really stout defense. It's unusual for a team to be this bad when their defense has played as well as they have, statistically at least. I don't love laying the 5.5 on the road, obviously. I'd look for live betting opportunities if the Titans get the first score. We have seen this before with them, and then bet the Vikings at a shorter number. But for now, I'd like the Vikings as in a first half number or Vikings team total over in the first half.
Oh, yeah, no, Tennessee all day long there, Blewett. I think we're going to laugh and be like, where's that been, Will Levis? Where's that been? Sam Darnold turns into a pumpkin. I don't know what the hell to do here in South Beach, Blewett, with this game in Miami. I don't even know what they are, quite honestly. The Raiders getting a touchdown here, not exactly like I'd run to the window and lay it here with Miami. Are you feeling any better about this Miami team? Because it still feels like an under to me.
I think that's fair. I do feel better about Miami. I think they're at least they have some semblance of an offense, even if Tyreek's not involved in the way that you need him to. But this Raiders team is gone through it, right? They're switching quarterbacks multiple times. They've fired half the staff. It's a team in disarray. 7 is too many to lay again. 5 betting opportunity. I would not bet on the Raiders in this spot at all. So I think I'm looking for Miami at a shorter number. And I think Miami is an interesting teaser possibility where they can win the game and you get them at a really short number.
5 consecutive losses for Las Vegas, 7 in total this year, only 2 covers in any of those 7 losses. Over in 4 of 5, though, for the Raiders. Big game for the Rams if they are going to have any hope of being a playoff team against the Patriots team that now has won multiple games. What is happening? But will the Rams bounce back on Sunday in Foxborough as a 4.5-point road favorite against the Pats?
I think they could. One thing you should note about these two teams, they do not get off to good first half starts. They're two of the lowest scoring first half teams. They average 15.3 points per game in the first half, and this first half total is 21.5. Now, the Patriots put up 13 in the first half last week, an offensive explosion against the Bears. But I do like the 4.5. I think you have to hold your nose and take the points here. It does not feel to me, and some people are positioning it this way, that Drake May has been transformative for this Patriots offense. I don't really see it that way. I think they played some other really bad football teams. So I think the Rams are better than them. 4.5, I think you hold your nose and take it. But my bet here is the first half under.
Darren Rizzi, the interim bump, snapped a 7-game skid for the Saints last week. Blewett, somebody literally has to win this game between the Browns and the Saints, and it's a pick'em on the money line. So who wins?
Let's go Browns money line. Yeah. I could give you bad reasons to pick both teams, and I won't do that. I won't disgrace this show nor the audience with me making things up. I'm guessing that the Browns are going to win because I think they're better defensively.
You're an honest man. Don't understand how that total is 44.5, but we'll talk about that in about half an hour. Mike Blewett, enjoy the weekend. See you Sunday on the grid. Hour number 3 up next.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.